Okay, so we're here for Divine Dilemmas. And today's question, well, this month's question is, how can I be a faithful Catholic and be in the military?
So I would just start with that we can apply this principle to the military, but with the principle being, if somebody attacks me and out of no provocation, somebody attacks me, I am allowed to defend myself, even to the point of if that person dies because my life is threatened and I defend myself. Now when it comes to other people, so that we call that the principle of self-defense, and that is upheld in our legal system in the United States. So that applies to the individual, and you can apply that in a broader sense to the state when it comes to being in the military and what the purpose of the military is, essentially to defend our country. And so I'll let you take over from here.
Yeah, so when we talk about the principle of self-defense against an unjust aggressor applying to the state or a collective group of people, I like to talk about the Catholic stance on this by situating the discussion in a historical context. The first 3 centuries of Christianity, Christians were persecuted, the religion was illegal in the Roman Empire, but all of a sudden, following the Edict of Milan and the legalization of Christianity by Constantine in 320, all of a sudden Christians were getting involved in the military affairs and everything, and at the sack of Rome in 410, the blame shifted to the Christians because they were notoriously loving and turning the other cheek, and a lot of the blame for the sack of Rome was put on the Christians. St. Augustine had a powerful response to that in the City of God, and this is the seeds of what the Catholic Church would teach about Christian involvement in war and military. But he advocated and stated that Christians actually made the best soldiers because they fought out of self-defense as a last resort, and the way they conducted their actions in warfare was just in terms of their interaction with innocent civilians and humanitarian issues, etc. So starting with St. Augustine, that issue of just war or just war theory began to be crystallized and thought about, and biblical law or natural law and biblical principles were applied to it, and it was finally refined by St. Thomas Aquinas, and the church has embraced the teaching of St. Thomas Aquinas about just war since. And it basically lays out 4 conditions for a war or a military campaign being just. And that is, like Father said, a legitimate case of self-defense where there's an unjust aggressor, or it could actually be, in a sense, offensive and you're preserving a fundamental human right. Also, it has to be a last resort, so all other forms of diplomacy have to be exhausted, other methods of conflict resolution. War is obviously the last result. And then also there has to be a probability of success. So there has to be a reasonable chance at victory, otherwise all that valuable human life, it's just a complete waste. So there has to be a chance at success. And then lastly, there has to be proportionality exercised, and that the evil that you're not seeking to cause greater harm or greater evil than the evil that you're trying to address and eliminate. For example, if China violates our airspace, we don't escalate to a nuclear response right away, right?
Can I just say one thing about, so when I talk about defending myself, I'm allowed to do that, but when it comes to defending somebody else, like our country and people from being aggressed towards, that's more of an obligation. So I can say respond with self-defense when it's me, but when it's somebody else, it's more of an obligation.
There's a duty.
Yeah, it's more of a, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, so as a person, an individual is contemplating enlisting in the military, it's worth and it's prudential to evaluate, the state of the military, the morale, what type of conflicts it's in. If a country or a nation is just actively involved in all these unjust wars, and your conscience has convicted you that it's well informed by the church's teachings on just war theory, then it would be morally problematic to enlist in a capacity where you're actually fighting and killing in the infantry or some supportive role like that. However, there's a lot of jobs in the military. You could also be a non-combatant, and it would be totally morally illicit and actually heroic, actually, to be a chaplain, a nurse, a doctor. There's a whole variety of different roles you can have in the military. But ultimately, the responsibility for evaluating those 4 criteria for a just war, it falls on, in modern nation states, the government, and principally the President of the United States. So there is a gray area in that, they have access to a lot of intelligence and information that we're not exactly privy to. But if we're certain and it's obvious and the church has spoken about this in any authoritative way, you use all that to form your conscience and prudentially evaluate the prospect of...
I think those just war criteria are in the catechism, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.